you had a good Easter weekend and you were able to enjoy your family and the weather smiled on you. So welcome back to the real world, and well, we've got a lot of good information here today. So we'll kind of get started. 5-minute moneymaker last week was, these are the 5 things. I mean, if you want, are you where you want to be for the year income-wise? If not, walk down this checklist and do something about it. So these 5 things, I actually had 2 people, which is pretty good. Usually people don't comment on these, but I actually had 2 people say this was a real eye-opener for them, and they were actually committed to doing these 8 things. And guys, if you can't just show up at work and have everyday business as usual. If you do that, let me get some answers to this. If you just show up to work and every day it's just business as usual, what are you going to get for the rest of the year? What are you going to get for the rest of the year? Same as last year, right, Wade? So the usual, exactly. So, I mean, how many guys have been in the business for 25, 30 years, and guess what the last 25 or 30 years have been? The same thing over and over and over. What's the sense of coming to work unless we can't get a little bit better every day? And that's what these things are about. That's what your 15-minute drill is about. Well, by the way, in the 15-minute drill, I mean, what's more important than the 15-minute? What if somebody walked into your office first thing in the morning and they had a huge bucket of money to give you? What's more important, taking that money or your 15-minute drill? That's right, the 15-minute drill, Wade. Because here's the thing, that the 15-minute drill is what's going to allow you to make that bucket of money. Great, there's one commission there. 15-minute drill is going to allow you to have an ATM. So guys, make sure there's nothing more important than starting your day with that 15-minute drill. Will your business collapse if you don't look at your emails for the first 15 minutes? Will it collapse if you don't get your voicemail for the first 15 minutes? Will it collapse if you don't read the paper or talk to your assistant for the 15 minutes? That first 15-minute of your day should be spent doing the 15-minute drill and doing all these other things. 5Q, the 5Q breakdown. Don't just listen to this 2-minute tape to learn how to do personal possession portion of the Survivor Guide the right way. So this is actually, you know, a lot of times I show, hey, this is the mistake he made, this is the mistake they made, this is the mistake they made. But this was a tape breakdown where the advisor actually did a great job, and you can learn from what he did. So please make sure, I mean, I'm sending these out to get you a little bit better every week, to make it easier for you to do that. Make sure you're paying attention to them, okay? So Jerry at ECA sent me this article, and it's really the sign of the times. Pennsylvania had a huge change in how the government works. Is anybody aware of what that huge change was in how the government works in the last month or so? They fired 30 private money managers. They fired 30 private money managers that were managing their funds. They moved their money from the $1.4 billion state workers insurance fund into indexes. They moved the money from the $700 million worker compensation fund into indexes. They moved $200 million underground storage tank indemnification fund into indexes. And guess why they decided to move them into indexes? When they did their due diligence, when they looked at all the things that those money managers had done, guess what they found out? What they find out, guys? None of them beat the market, right, Mark? In fact, one reported, the Philadelphia Inquirer reported that one of the money managers collected $1.3 million in fees, and it lagged the broader market by 5%. Now, that's not 5% of 5% of the return. It was a full 5%. So if the market had done 10%, they only did 5%, and yet they charged 1.3 funds, or $1.3 million in fees. Now here's the thing, you're saying, well, but, if you manage money, I hear you all saying, but maybe they were managing for risk. Guess what, guys? If they're managing for risk, does that matter? Because that's not how it works. That, you know, of course they're not going to get what the index gets. They're managing for risk. Well, you know what? Here's the thing. I don't know how to do your job, but let me explain to you how I think you should do it anyways. What I mean by that is what? Yeah, all sleeves have benchmarks. That's right. So here's the thing. when the market goes down, and they're only down 15%, but the market's down 20%, will they get any kudos? Will the money managers get any kudos? That's right, Wade. No, they will not. How about that's from supposed guys that are supposed to know what they're doing, the fiduciaries of the state's monies, doing due diligence, and they won't get any credit. What do you think that the consumer is going to think when their account is down 15%, but the market's down 20%? Are they going to pat you on the back and say, "Good job, I'm sure glad I invested with you and your money manager because you sure helped us protect our money"? How many consumers are going to say that? How many of your clients are actually going to say that to you? I want everybody to answer this. I got one answer. I got 5 answers. They're all right. Come on, guys. And now they're all coming in. Yeah, none of them are. And yet when the market goes up 20% and you only get 10, what are they going to say? They're going to have your head. See, you can have results or you can have excuses, but not both. And guess what? When you try to explain to a client why it's good to be down less than the market, or you try to explain to a client why your account's not up as much as the market, guess what they're going to look at that as? Good results? That the account's working exactly as it should? Or are they going to look at it as an excuse? That's right. They're going to look at it as an excuse. So, guys, why do I say this is the sign of the times? This is a huge state. They moved basically their entire public funds into indexes. If states are doing that, how long do you think before consumers are doing that? Now the good news is I've talked to Joe at ECA, and they're actually planning with their RIA that they're building to have. We're working very closely with them to have an index money management, so you can keep the fees low, still make more money. Keep the fees low and make more money because it's going to be a very simple index fund. So we're working on that now, and that'll be very easy to sell as compared to all these other entities out there with 1% to the advisor, 1% to the money manager. How long do you think that's going to last, guys? 1% to the money manager, 1% to the advisor. How long do you think that's going to last? Yeah, not much longer, right? Not much longer. So we're on top of this, and this is something that I always wanted to do anyways. I love index funds, and there's ways to use index funds to intelligently and simply to give the client a higher rate of return with much less fees. That's a win-win. So stay tuned for that. Next thing I want to talk about is inherited IRAs. It never hurts to kind of review this, and this comes up sometimes with our clients who inherit IRAs from their parents. First of all, it's not as easy as you would think. It's complicated. And guys, I just talked to 2 people in the last month that found huge mistakes with the people they sat down with, the prospects they sat down with, in these people's beneficiaries. You'd think this would be simple and easy. It's not. It's complicated. And because it's complicated, it's a great opportunity. Why? Why is that a great opportunity? Why mistakes? Why are mistakes a good opportunity? It's a way, again, for us to have them decide that their guy is not doing his job because he doesn't care about anything except making money, and that the harm can come to their family because of the mistakes he made because he's paying attention to only the things that he gets paid on. So it's a great opportunity. So here's some examples. When you inherit an IRA, and I've actually seen this lots of times dealing with clients. When they inherit IRAs, guess what they forget to do? They forget to continue to take the RMDs. Here's an example. While Roth IRA owners don't have to take RMDs, non-spouse beneficiaries do have to take RMDs. Do you think clients make this mistake? Do you think this is a mistake that clients will make? Yes. And obviously, we all know there's a 50% penalty if they miss that. So here's the thing. You may avoid the penalty by emptying the account within 5 years. So if you run across a client who's forgotten to take the RMDs, rather than take the 50% penalty, they have 2 options. Number one is they can empty the entire account within 5 years of the owner's death. What's the problem with that? What's the problem with having, they're going to at least avoid that 50% penalty, but what's the problem with it? Yeah. Well, what do you mean by taxes? What about the taxes? They're not going to be able to what? Stretch it over their lifetime. But here's what you want to do when that happens is calculate, because depending on the size of the IRA and the age of the beneficiary, it might make more sense to pay the penalty to avoid having to liquidate the account. So if it was a grandchild or a very young child that had inherited it, you might be better off paying the 50% penalty on the RMD because they'll be able to stretch it longer, having it in that they're younger. So, guys, are these easy things? How many clients do you think are mentally equipped or professionally equipped or knowledge-wise equipped to handle these kind of questions? Geez, I'll venture to guess, Jeff, how many advisors are equipped to make this kind of decision? Or would they just say, would there be a knee-jerk reaction, oh, we got to avoid that 50% penalty, let's just go ahead and pay that? How many would actually go through the motions of calculating that and realize that, Jeff?
Yeah, very few. And the nice thing about this is even do-it-yourselfers, a lot of times, especially when it comes to things like this and taxes, they know they're over their head. So they'll argue with you that they know more about investing than anybody, but they won't argue with you that they don't know that much about taxes or how RMDs or IRAs work.
They love the sexy investing. Guess what they hate? The tedious and putsy. That's where we make our money, guys, in the tedious and the putsy. Titling the account improperly. So non-spouse bennies can't just roll an inherited IRA into their own IRA. Guys, I know that you think, duh, this is simple. Jeff, we've never seen this happen in 17 years, have we?
Yeah, this happens a lot.
Because guys just think, oh, well, geez, I'm just going to I'll just roll into my IRA. And you might think, oh, you know what, Vanguard won't allow it. Oh, Schwab won't allow it. Guys, guess what happens every single day? Does Vanguard or Schwab really care about keeping the details right? What does Vanguard and Schwab care about? Getting the money, getting the fees. They must set up a separate account. Jim Smith, deceased, 615 IRA FBO, Claire Smith. Guess what would be a good question to ask people when you're gathering data? What do you think a great question to ask clients when you're collecting the data? No, it's not data the owner. It's not how is it titled. You need to ask something even before that. What is occurring that's the biggest roll of assets this country has ever seen? What is the big boomers passing away, or actually the greatest generation passing away? Boomers are inheriting this. So what would be a great question to ask people? Let me go back here. Guys, non-spouses cannot roll inherited IRAs into their own IRA. If you see they have an IRA, would you know that they'd done this mistake? How would you know they'd made this mistake, guys? Unless you asked a question. Aha, that's right, Bonnie. That's right, Mark. Do you have any inherited IRAs? Have you inherited any IRAs from your parents or other relatives? That would be a fantastic question to ask. And how many people have now? Should we see more and more people that have inherited IRAs from their parents, etc.? And I'll ask you a question. How often do you run across IRAs that are labeled this way? So Jeff, let me ask you, do you see that very often when you get those accounts sent to you?
I don't see it very often, no.
No, neither do I. So guess what that means? Do you think there's some mistakes out there, guys? So be asking, have you inherited any IRAs? That's another lever that you can use to have them understand their guy isn't doing their job. Also, if it's split among multiple bennies, make sure it's properly titled to each one of those beneficiaries. And don't forget to name the successor beneficiaries. So often they're so worried about getting the money and they'll say, you know what, I just need to get that money over, get it titled, hopefully titled correctly, and guess what, they say, I'll circle back and get the beneficiaries. If they have an inherited IRA, I bet you it's 50-50 whether they added beneficiaries on that, because they're thinking about, I'll just deal with that down the road, okay? So these are things that you can easily be looking for. Also, not dividing them on the heirs. If there's a wide age difference, that can cause a problem because you won't be able to stretch it. It also allows younger people to invest more aggressively than the older folks. So this is a good thing. Now, here's a big one that you run into on an occasional basis, and a lot of advisors, so Jeff, you can pipe, after I get through with this, go ahead and pipe in here, but if the trust is the beneficiary, you still need to do the beneficiary section because there's lots of things that can be wrong. So here's some things that can be wrong. Only individuals that are considered designated beneficiaries by the IRA are allowed for stretch IRA provisions. An individual must be named as a beneficiary of the trust. So there must be an individual named as a beneficiary of the trust. Also, you should never name a non-individual in addition to the person. So if you name a charity as a beneficiary and a child or two children, guess what just happened to that trust? Guess what happened to the ability of the trust to stretch it? If you name a charity and the children in the trust, guess what's happened to the ability to stretch that IRA? Gonzo. It must be a conduit trust or lose the stretchability. So, guess what a good question to ask people when it comes to the trust, the trust as beneficiary. Oh, is that a conduit trust? And guess what people are going to say when you ask them that? Yeah, what? Exactly. Ooh, then we need to make sure we take a closer look at that, because if it's not a conduit trust, you just really crippled your heirs' ability to delay the taxes, and you'll end up paying a ton more. They'll end up paying a ton more taxes. I'm assuming, do you want most of the money to go to the government or most of the money to go to the beneficiary, to your children? Then we need to make sure that this trust is a conduit trust. Why would you want to do that, guys? Why would you want to have that conversation? Because they believe that what? Oh, you know what? I made my trust as beneficiary, so guess what? All good. So it has to mandate that the amounts. Here's the thing, guys, and this is why you find a ton of trusts are done wrong. It has to mandate that the amounts distributed from the IRA as RMDs go to the trust beneficiaries. If it assumes that the beneficiary will do that, guess what happens? No longer works. If it's not specifically included, numerous problems can occur. If the trust provides flexible provisions for how the assets are distributed, this again can cause big problems. And if a trust is a beneficiary, you need to send a copy of the trust to the IRA custodian by October 31st of the year following the owner's death. Otherwise, the trust is considered a non-designated beneficiary and you lose the stretch provisions. This is also a good question you could ask people. So there are a ton of things that can be wrong with the trust as beneficiary. So you should not skip the beneficiary section when the trust is the beneficiary. So anything to add to that, Jeff?
Yeah, I think the only thing that I would add is just like Mike said, these trusts have to be conduit trusts, or sometimes they'll be referred to as look-through trusts. And look-through trusts they're really, the language has to be just right. If it's not just right, they'll ding you tax-wise. What'll happen is you won't be able to stretch it, and everybody will be taxed as the same as the highest income earner, trust rates basically, the highest tax rate that's available. So just because a trust is a beneficiary doesn't mean that it's okay. It has to be a look-through or a conduit trust, and that's not, you're not just going to stumble into one by accident. If they haven't gone to an attorney and specifically checked that, it isn't going to pass.
Well, and you might be wondering, why would the attorney not do this? Because the attorney is not thinking that the reason he's doing this trust is for it to be named as the beneficiary. He's doing it, he's creating this trust so they can put their house into it and their non-qualified assets into it. So he's not, most attorneys aren't specifically looking to make this trust work as a beneficiary for the qualified money. That's why you find that a lot of trusts are done incorrectly. Not incorrectly for the house, not incorrectly for non-qualified money, but incorrectly for qualified money. And how many, if you put that question to your clients, how many are going to say, yeah, it's done correctly? Well, they would. If you say, is it done correctly? They're going to say, yes, it's doing correctly. You need to ask these questions to them. And they'll say, Jesus, I don't even know. And again, what's the problem with having the trust as the beneficiary if it's not done correctly when you're talking to a client? What's the consequence of that? Lose the stretch, but say it in a different way, Wade. Do you want most of the money to go to where versus to where? That's how you say it. Because they say, hey, you're going to lose your stretch abilities. Is that an intellectual or is that an emotional question? Do you want to lose the stretch? Is that an emotional or an intellectual question? That's right, it's an intellectual question. To make it emotional, you say what? Do you want your life savings, most of it to go to the U.S. government to spend as they want, or do you want most of it to go to your children so they can spend as they want? Now that is being emotional, or is that intellectual? That's the emotional. That's how you're going to ask this. So don't just panic when they say their trust is their beneficiaries, okay? These are the questions that you'll ask. Okay, so then the next thing I want to talk about is losing a spouse. Why is losing a spouse an important thing? Well, the mean age when a wife becomes a widow is 59.4 years, which means 50% of the people women become widows before the age 59 and a half, and 50% become widows after 59 and a half. 700,000 women lose their husbands each year. 70% of all women who are married will lose their spouse. Now, why do you think I keep bringing up women, women, women here? Why am I bringing up the women here? First of all, they're more likely to get widowed earlier or to lose their spouse early, but why else? Well, they live longer, that's another reason, but why else? It's more of an emotional reason. Why else? What do guys think as compared to women? What is the way guys think as compared to women? That's right, we're invincible. We don't think. That's right. So guys are never worried about running out of money because they think what? Oh, I'll just drive over a cliff if that's the case. I'll go live in the woods if that. They come up with all stupid ass things that they're going to do if they run out of money. They're not sane. They're insane when it comes to this stuff. But women are very practical. Why are women practical when it comes to this stuff? Because they've seen it. They've seen their mothers, they've seen their sisters, they've seen their friends experience the suffering that happens when they lose a spouse and their income. Death of a spouse is ranked as the #1 stressor because it has a snowball effect. What's the snowball effect when you lose a spouse? Well, Jeannie, you're right. Life goes on. They lose income. They get all sorts of new responsibilities they didn't have before. There's lots of reasons for this. Actually, 60% of people who lose their spouse will have serious illness within the next 12 months, and it's all based on stress. 75% will lose 70% of social support is lost, which you think is strange, but what they're saying here is that when you lose a spouse, you're going to lose well, it's just like when you have a kid. When you have a kid, what happens to all your friends? If you're the first one of your friends to have kids, what happens to those friends? They're all still single. They're all still married but don't have kids. When you have a kid, what happens to all your friends? Yeah, they just drift away. So, and they found the same thing happens when you're used to having couples, and then Mary loses her husband, so Jim and Mary, now there's only Mary. Guess what the couples that used to get together do with Mary? When they're going out to eat, guess what who they don't invite? So 70% of it, you'd think that people would rally to her aid, and they do. They all rally to her aid, but then they go what? Away. Yeah, initially, right, Fred? Then they go away. For the past 30 years, the rate of poverty among elderly widows is 3 to 4 times that of married women. Why? Why do do widows have 3 to 4 times more poverty than married women? They lose income. They lose income. And here's the funny thing. 70% of widows will end up firing their advisor in the first 5 years. Why did 70% of widows end up firing their advisor in the first 5 years? 2 reasons. Why did 70% of widows end up firing their advisor in the first 5 years? No relationship, right, Mark? That's right. And what's the second reason? They feel insecure with them. What do you mean by that, Tim? You're right. That's the reason. They feel insecure with them. Why? What way? Yeah. Why? Why does the woman feel insecure with the advisor? That's right. He's bossy, Mark. He's very what? Condescending. So these are things that we should be paying attention to or not. We talked about one thing. We talked about the greatest generation, huge billions and actually trillions of dollars moving from the greatest generation to baby boomers, and then it's going to bounce again. How's it going to bounce again? How's that money going to bounce again? It's going to bounce from couples to what? Widows. So these are important things for us to know. So here's some stats that we should know about widows. So right here, it's saying that among women whose spouses had life insurance when they died, the life insurance proceeds lasted just 2.5 years. So that's not a very long time. But they wished they'd had funds that lasted 14 years or longer. 68% of women report significant life. Look at this, guys. Over two-thirds of women report significant life changes after the death of a spouse, with financial concerns being the top of that. Feeling secure isn't the same as being secure. 77% of women reported feeling secure about their finances before the death of their spouses, but when they were faced with a very different picture afterwards. They found that, let's see here. Okay, this is the women impacted. The pink is women impacted. So 55% of them had to change, had to adjust to a change in income. 46% had to budget differently for one income. 38% had to cut discretionary expenses. 22% were not able to afford a vacation. 21% said they regretted not saving enough for retirement. So are these little numbers or big numbers here? These are big numbers. 2 in 5 women whose spouses did not have life insurance report that they struggle to meet just basic needs. Now, is this just talking about poor people? It's not just talking about poor people. Why? What do you find? What's the difference between poor people and people who are doing okay? Oh, Fred says, my dad passed away last year, and my stepmom's income went from $4,700 a month to $1,700 a month. Guys, $4,700 a month to $1,700 a month. What happens to somebody who experiences that? Geez, that's panic is right. So this is why are the things we're talking about here actually affect people who are doing well as compared to people who are poor? So that's what you need to understand. You might think people who are doing well wouldn't worry about this. People who are doing well actually can be affected by this more. Yeah, that's right, Jerry. Lifestyles. Oh, and Dale, you said it. Lifestyles. They're used to living where? How are they used to living? They're used to living well. So when they lose an income, boom, they are really hit hard. Over here, 59% of women report they didn't have enough life insurance in place to feel financially secure. 47% of women report that they wish they had some more life insurance. So why do you think all these things are, I mean, this is important. Who are we going to talk to when it comes, talk directly to, eye to eyeball with, when we talk about these things? The wife, the wife, the wife, the wife. So what should we do then? Well, the first thing is we need to have a plan. How many people do you think have a plan for when they lose their spouse's income? None. I would agree with that. None. Well, Fred, Fred, please send me the name of the people who had a plan for when they lose their spouse's Social Security. Because in 17 years, Jeff, how many plans have we done for people who actually had considered that as part of the thing they need to plan for?
Yeah, we don't run into those people. I mean, it's just rare.
That's right. So we need to, if we need to have them know that this is a problem, and then you have a plan for it. So if you think about it, this is our mini elevator speech. I get homeowners mortgage for 1956 in Homestead County, 21 little known benefits they are owed but not receiving, including a program to make sure your wife doesn't lose half her Social Security income when they pass away. When the husband passes away. That should be changed to when their husband passes away. Can you help me with that, Tricia or Missy?
Yep, it sure will.
On the website. So guys, why do we say why do we say a program to make sure your spouse doesn't lose half their Social Security income? Why do we say your wife? There's a very specific reason we have that. Why do we say your wife versus your spouse? Not more personal, not more emotional. We just talked about it 5 minutes ago, guys. Why? It's not because men pass first. Those are all true things, but that's not why we do it. We just talked about it. Why? Arthur, you're right. The wife cares. What do you mean the wife cares? Because you're right, Arthur. That's the reason why. Why? Why does she care? She's seen it, Mark. More women consider see, it's not the emotions, guys. Why? Because do men worry about this crap? They think what? Men don't worry about, I'm going to, like I said, they're going to say, I'm going to go live in the woods, or I'll drive my car off a cliff. They say stupid things like that. Rather than face reality, they'll say stupid things so they don't have to face reality. But women have experienced it. Women have seen their mothers, their sisters, their friends lose, like Fred shared, go from making $4,700 a month to $1,700 a month. They've seen it happen. So I don't say spouse, I say wife, and then I look at the wife and I look at the husband and say, what are you going to do to take care of your wife? And he better have a what? He better have an answer, and if he doesn't have an answer, he better show what? If he doesn't have an answer, he sure in the heck better show what? Concern. Yep, concern. So that's why our elevator speech says this way, not your spouse, but your wife. And how many people have even considered this? When they've sat down with their advisor, has this come up in a conversation with their advisor? And here's the sad thing. Jeff, you and I have worked with tons of advisors who are Social Security quote-unquote experts, right? And of course, they make this the linchpin of their Social Security. If you think about it, Jeff, what's more important, making an extra couple $100 a month or this?
Oh, this is more important because this
by a little or a lot. Yeah, this is guaranteed to happen by a lot. And this can cripple. Hey, getting an extra couple $100, is that a good thing? Heck yeah. But will getting an extra $100 change their lives, or are they just squeezing the sponge to get them everything they're owed out of Social Security? But this is not talking about squeezing some more out of Social Security. What are we talking about here, Jeff?
Well, we're talking about making sure the spouse is cared for when the husband dies.
And why? What are we talking about cared for? Making sure she doesn't become what?
Poor.
Poor. Poor. Poor. Poor. So guys, even Social Security experts, how much time do they, quote-unquote experts, are spending talking about having a plan in place for when the spouse loses half their income? See, so they're not talking about this. So what does that allow us, guys? It's a huge lever, huge lever. Here's the other thing. Now, this does occur when you talk about planning, which is Social Security benefits. If Susan was signed up correctly as a widow, Social Security benefits are widow, if she signed up correctly, she'll get $26,464 at retirement versus $1,500. That's a little or big difference. Little or big difference. Holy crap, holy, that's a huge difference. So when I'm talking about Social Security, guess what I'm going to leverage? Getting them an extra few $100, that's not a bad thing. I'm going to talk about it, but is that the primary thing I'm talking about or the secondary thing I'm talking about? Primary or secondary? Secondary. I need to be talking about what's your plan to protect your wife when you die, because she's going to lose your Social Security check. How's that going to, and guys, well-to-do people, are they relying on their Social Security check? When I say well-to-do, I'm not talking about people with $100 million. I'm talking about the upper income, the low affluent that we work with. Do they need their Social Security income? Yes, they count on it. They don't need it, but they count on it. They don't need it, but it will change that spouse's life if it goes away. If nothing else, it will cause extra what? Even if it did not affect her lifestyle, it will cause what? Stress. So what else should we do? So you get, this is the main thing we want to talk about when it comes to Social Security. Losing that income, how we can take care of the wife when we lose the husband's income. So this is stuff you need to know backwards and forwards, okay? What else do we need to take care of? Well, we need to make sure that, if the husband takes care of all the investments, we better make sure that she has the username and passwords, right? Just for the website or also where? Just for the website or also for what? Well, here's the thing. So my wife goes to the website, she doesn't have that. So then she calls up my broker, and what is the broker going to ask? Even if she's joint on my account, what is the broker going to ask? Yeah, speak to Mike, then what's she going to ask? Guys, do you not have any brokerage accounts? When you call up and you say, hey, yeah, I'd like to go know what's going on with my account, what do they ask you? Especially if you're working with a Vanguard or a TD Ameritrade or Charles Schwab, what do they ask you? Yes, they ask you for some sort of PIN number, not just Social Security number, but just a simple Social Security. They don't do that anymore. They also want to know what? Want to know what your first car was. They want to know what they have other things to make sure that the person talking to them is the right person. I sure the heck hope they do, because if they don't, you better find a new broker, because you're just about this close to losing your money. So if you, not only do you need to have the website's username, password, you need to have just the regular a list of the passwords and such that are different from the website to talk to a human being at the other end of the line as well. Does that make sense? So that's another thing they need to have. Because, and the thing is that, as we've talked about this before, when I'm mowing the lawn, does my wife grab the left side of the handle and I grab the right-hand side of the handle, or do we both have, when I'm mowing the lawn, she's doing something else? Do we divide our jobs? We divide our jobs. So when it comes to investing, most times, not always, but most times, it's really, if you think about it, there's never going to be a time where I've never run across, where both people in the relationship have an equal understanding of how the investments work. Unless it's two single people who got married and are keeping their money separate. Otherwise, what they do is one person knows about the investments, and another, for example, in my family, I know about the investments, my wife knows about the checkbook. She writes all the bills. So for her, investment is confusing. So the people who aren't taking care of investments, can we agree, are investments confusing to them? Is it a second language to them? Is it a language they don't know how to speak and they don't know what to do? So this is a problem. So as an advisor, here's the thing. Should we just be talking to the guy? What if the wife never wants to come to the meetings? What if the wife never wants to come to the meetings? What if the wife never wants to come to meetings? You have an advantage that other advisors don't have. Wives don't ever want to come to other advisors. No wonder 70% of women move the money when their husbands die, because they've never been to the meetings. Why are they never going to those other meetings with their advisor? When you say not required, Wade, what do you mean? Why are they bored, Mike? You're right. No? Come on, guys. Why? Oh, you should know this, guys. Why? Ah, Mark, finally. They're only talking about the investments. So if they only talk about the investments and the woman doesn't know anything about the investments, doesn't care about the investments, does she feel like she needs to go? No. And the advisor, he's cool with that. What an idiot. So how do we deal with that? Why do we not have that problem? If you do this right, what do we talk about? What's the first thing we talk about at every annual meeting? What should be the first thing you're talking about at every annual meeting? The 21-point checklist, right, Mark? You're going to start at the survivor's guide and say, now, did you get the survivor's guide done? Well, no, we didn't get that. Well, shoot, we should have done it. Okay, folks, why do we need to do this again? Do you need another one? I can get you another one. We need to get this filled because we you know what? Life throws us curveballs. Why do we need to get? See, I'm just going to walk them through the. I had people for clients for 3 years before I gave my practice away. I had clients for 3 years. I asked them for 3 years, did they have the survivor's guide done, and they never had it done. Doesn't matter. I'm still going to ask them every year, did you get it done? So the first thing we talk about is the survivor's guide. And then we go right through the 21-point checklist, just like we did before. So it always reminds them that we're more about the family than we are about the wife. And yeah, Wade says it addresses the wife. So she comes to these meetings because it's things about that she cares about. We're talking her language. Half the meeting is about her. Sure, half the meeting is about investments, or at least half the meeting is about her. With other advisors, if the wife doesn't care about the investments, they do what? They're playing Candy Crush on their phone if they show up at all. So we have a huge advantage. You can't just talk to the man. You better make sure that the wife comes, because knowing that 70% of women will change advisors when their husband passes. Also, make sure what's on their utility bill, their cable bill, their phone bill. Make sure what? What should you make sure they have? Well, their name's always going to be on it. But what do you mean by name? Both names, right, Michael? Make sure both names are on it. How many advisors recommend that, do you think? None. Exactly. Titling and beneficiaries. If they have a what do you call it, a second family or a combined family, where, you know, like the Brady Bunch here, she brought her kids and he brought his kids, make sure, blended family, thank you. Make sure that the titling beneficiaries are what? Done correctly and thoughtfully. Guys, is this a landmine? Is having blended families a landmine when it comes to titling and beneficiaries? How much time do you think most people put into it? And I've heard clients, they do put some time and effort into it, but are they skilled at this? Is this their profession? I've seen people who put tons of time and effort into it, but don't know what the heck they're doing, and in the end, guess what? Better off or worse off because they put time and thought into it? Worse off. They screw it up even worse, exactly. So be looking at that if they have a split or a blended family. Also, make sure they understand monthly expenses, okay? Make sure they understand monthly expenses and what's going to happen to their income and what's going to happen to expenses. Guess what people think when they die, when their spouse dies, what do they think is going to happen to expenses? It's going to go down. Do expenses go down generally? Do expenses go down when they lose a spouse? No. In fact, if you look at it, generally, what happens to taxes when you lose a spouse? For most people in middle income to upper middle income, what happens to their taxes? That's right, it goes up. So now they have less income coming in, but the expenses stay the same. So, and they should know this, not because we're trying to let them know, whenever I'm talking about expenses with a client, I let them know I'm not trying to put them on an allowance. I'm not trying to tell them to spend less. All I want them to know, just like everything else to do, all I'm trying to do is make sure that they what? When it comes to their investment fees, when it comes to their power of attorney, when it comes to their beneficiaries, when it comes to their expenses, I'm not trying to put them on I'm trying to make sure they understand what they have so they make sure they're in the best position possible now. So when do I cover all this stuff? When should I be covering all this stuff about having a program in place so your wife doesn't lose half the Social Security income when they pass away? Making sure their Social Security benefits are set up correctly so when you die, the wife could get up to 64% more of the Social Security. Making sure they have passwords not only for the website but also to talk to people individually. Making sure they are involved with the investing. If not understanding, at least involved and ready to talk to me about investing. Making sure that they have both names on their bills, etc. When would entitling beneficiaries for blended families? When should I talk about it? Yeah, during the, but I'm sorry, when, okay, so we've got titling. That's one, you could do it at titling. But where I would recommend is during the survivor's guide. Because where are we putting most of the emphasis on? First of all, we're talking about dying here, right? So we're talking about dying. One of the spouses dying, when would be the appropriate time to talk about it? During the survivor's guide. Well, before they die, yeah. But where in the, guys, if we're talking about dying, when in the 21-point checklist should we talk about this stuff? There's a little hint on the screen. Let me see you write it down. Apparently nobody's getting it yet. Survivor's guide. When we're covering the survivor's guide, if we're talking about somebody dying, when should we talk about this stuff? During, while we're talking about the survivor's guide. Now, in the survivor's guide, what is the main focus when we talk about a spouse dying? What is our main focus on? That they need to have what? They need to consider what? When it comes to a spouse dying, what's our main focus? I've said it 3 or 4 times. What's our main focus? When it comes to a spouse dying, what about, yeah, the wife, you're right, the wife. What's the main focus when it comes to the wife? What about income? What's our main focus when it comes to the wife at the loss of a spouse? What income? What income, guys? Social Security, thank you. Social Security income. So do we ever talk about Social Security during the survivor's guide? In fact, we do. There's a section called what? Social Security. So when would be an appropriate time to say, are you utilizing the program that will protect your wife from losing half her income when you pass away? And guys, that is the verbiage you should use. Are you using the program that will protect your wife or protect your wife from losing, you got to say losing half your income when you pass away? See, they have to actually see or hear losing. You don't want to say, are you protecting your wife at the loss of your income? No, is it your wife losing income at your death? Mark, $250 is not, $255, that death benefit, that's worthless. That's not what we're talking about. Don't even bring that up. What are we talking about here, guys? When it comes to their death, unless I'm misunderstanding you, Mark, that $255 death benefit, who gives a shit about that? What we're talking about is what? Okay, yeah, so what are we talking about here? Loss of income, the loss of the spouse's income. So this would be a time that you talk about do you have that program in place? What else would you be talking about? Have you done an analysis on your Social Security to make sure she's getting the highest income? That can be a difference. That can be a 64% higher income for the rest of her life. 64%. Would you like your wife not only to have a replacement income, but has 64% higher income at your death? Would that be important? Do you have both of your names on all of your bills? Why is that important? Do you have passwords not only for your web accounts, but do you have them for your wife to call up and talk to the brokerage? I mean, these are, guys, this is the time you'd want to talk about that. So this is early on. This is the first thing we talk about in a meeting, and what are people thinking at this point? What are people thinking about you in the first 10 minutes you're meeting with them? See, a lot of this with the survivor's guide is big picture stuff, and we've talked about, hey, families can fight if you don't have these things written down. Hey, do some people have those things written down in their will, Jeff?
Yeah, some families do.
They do. We run across that. How many people have you run across that have talked about these things, Jeff?
None.
So now we've taken something that, sometimes we're not able to put the leverage on, hey, families will fight over if you don't have a list of things. Hey, my family would never fight over that. Hey, blah, 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 blah. See, what we've done is, if you put your emphasis here, this affects how many people that are married? Everybody. Everybody. So, guys, start using this. And early on, it's letting people know that what? Holy crap, holy. This guy is talking about things nobody's ever talked about before. This guy is talking about important things. And who do we have on our side immediately in the first 10 minutes? The wife. That's right, the wife. Does that make sense? So is this important stuff or not important stuff that we're covering today? Should you be using this or not using this in your meetings? please, please, please use this stuff in your meetings, okay? This is a tweak. This is a tweak to the Survivor's Guide that we'll be adding to the more information section of the Survivor's Guide. So it's not actually in the tutorial. It'll be at the bottom, but I would highly recommend that you use this stuff, okay? When you start to, when you meet people in that Survivor's Guide. So these are the questions. What's your plan to replace, not your, again, this is wrong. This is wrong. Why is this wrong? Plan to replace, I wrote this and I did it wrong. Plan to replace your spouse's social security income at their death. Why is that? It should be the wife, right? What's your plan to replace your wife's social your income? What's your plan to make sure your wife doesn't lose half her income at your death? That's what we should be asking there. Get the highest, what's your plan to have you analyze getting the highest payout for your spouse on Social Security at your death? So not only is there a replacement for it, but making sure that when you get it, you're getting the highest amount possible. It can be 64% higher. Do you have passwords? Not only where are your passwords for your website, okay, now where are your passwords for when they call up and talk to the brokerage directly or the investment company directly? Do you have joint names on your Social Security? Why is that an important thing? Have you ever called the cell phone company and your name wasn't on the bill? So do you do a joint review of your investments every year? So these are things that you'd be asking right here, okay? Right here is where I would recommend it. So when you've mastered these guys, when you've mastered the scripts and motive, you've done your daily practice of the 15-minute drill and getting on their side, you're paying attention to the 5-minute moneymaker and the breakdowns every single week. When you do that, what's the importance, and I want everybody to answer this, when you've done these things, what happens with every prospect you get in front of? An ATM, right. They move, not good things, tell me, what? An ATM, they move on the right. So guys, and I still have guys that have been on the system for 3 years, and when they don't get the, guys, when they don't get the money, guess where they put the blame? It's so easy to do this. Guess where they put the blame? Oh, that person was a real bitch. No! If the person's a bitch, then whose problem is it? It's always on us. You should be able to close 100% of people. You won't close 100% of people. Why won't you close 100% of people? Though you could, who are the people we will not close? The people we don't want, exactly. The people we don't want, which is about 10% of people. But when you do this, guys, when you do this, you will close 100% of all clients. Why? Because they're going to spend an hour and a half to 2 hours telling you what. If you do the scripts correctly, and so many of you guys, thank you. I cannot tell you how impressed I am with the amount of guys that have gone through the tutorials now, are using them and saying, holy crap, holy. I thought I knew these scripts. I had no clue. Because now that I actually memorize the tutorials, guess what? It's like the client has the script. The client's saying what I want to say. The stress in 1 month of them learning, of you guys learning the tutorials, the guys I've talked to that have learned them are saying, geez, I mean, the stress has gone away. The meetings they've never in their 25 years of being in the business have had meetings go this way where the client knows what they're supposed to say. So keep up the great work, guys. This is so, Jeff, have you seen such a huge group of people learn the scripts as quickly as has happened in the last 2 months?
No, and I can hear it too, because when I get tapes for tape review, it's obvious that you guys know the scripts. So it's good.
So thank you very much for you guys for doing that, and please put this stuff into use that we covered today, and we'll try to get that on the more information part of the Survivor's Guide portion of the website. Thanks, everybody. You have a great rest of the week.